Okay, let's just do that. It's our saves on network time. All right, so this is a no PowerPoint presentation, yay. So we're gonna just jump right into Web Intelligence to talk about the various things. And the things that I'm gonna talk about today are transparency and images, a little bit about inter-document linking, and then depending on an image overlay, we're also gonna talk about, so it's kind of everything to do with images and icons and things like that. That's the general topic. And then depending on time, 30 minutes is always one of those like iffy things. So depending on the questions and time, I might throw in some stuff on data series. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is transparency. And the trick to transparency, there's a couple tricks to transparency. Transparency happens in the background. So if we look at like the cell, let me make sure I'm in design mode. So we look at the cell and I go into format cell and I go into appearance. I see that I've set this cell for no color. That's the transparency. So if I set it to, to show with a color, it's no longer going to be kind of transparent. It's going to fill. So, so that's the idea for transparency on a cell. And then when it comes to the difference there is when it comes to tables. Tables have both cells and then the table itself. So again, it's still in the background on the appearance. So if I go into format table and you want this to be transparent, and I go into appearance and I set it to no color, so it's transparent, and I say, okay, if I just do that, you would think it would be transparent, but it's not. See, if I overlay it on top of this chart, you can see it's not showing through the chart in the background. So the problem is that these cells themselves have a transparency. So we go to appearance, and I say no color on the cells. And now if I click away, you can see the chart behind it. So that's the one thing to consider about transparency when it comes to cells and tables. When it comes to transparency on backgrounds or on charts, transparency on charts is a little bit different. I'm going to come back to that because it's more on a slider basis. So I'm going to come back to that when I bring up charts. But what I want to talk about next is when you've got how transparency affects. Actually, no, let's looking at my notes. Yes, I do want to cover the chart. So I thought I was going to do this next. So if you go into charts, the transparency on charts is interesting because it's dependent on different pieces. So the chart background, and if I set this as a dark background, you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and set the background appearance of the report to have something other than white because it's white on white. So let me do like a dark green. And now you can see that it's not transparent because it's white. But if I set the chart to be in format chart, to be background that's not a matter of no color, it's a matter of slider, to be transparent. Now I've got the issue of like all the different fonts to be a certain color. So so I want, I'd have to go in and change all these fonts, and there's kind of a shortcut to that. So one of the things I want to point out is if you're on the chart, if you're away from the chart, it won't show up, but look right here. If you're on the chart, you'll see this palette style show up, and in there is of course your colors, but the second one over is a high contrast. This is kind of a shortcut way of getting all of your text to be white. So if I go to high contrast, if I did that first, and then I went in and did my format chart background and slider to make it transparent, then I see the background. Notice that in this case, the plot area has been given color. So I actually have to do the plot area as well. So that's kind of a two-step thing as opposed to the original. But that's the idea, is that the chart, the palette style actually gives you all these fonts to be white, which is kind of helpful in shortening the amount of time you'd have to, to set the transparency and the font color on a dark background. And that's usually when you want a transparent chart. So that's a little bit about that. The next thing I want to show is when getting into images, because images and transparency kind of start to go together, especially when we deal with overlaying, which I'm going to do in a minute. So the next thing I want to talk about is linking and with images. And the thing about linking is when you create a link, you have to have something to link on. And it kind of deals with what we've shown so far, because you notice that all these changes we've made in appearance have been made to the background. So the same thing applies to images. So when you apply an image, if I went into format table appearance and I added an image, it's going to be in the background. So what if I want it in the foreground? Well, why would I want it in the foreground? And that really comes down to linking. And so specifically, we use it in our dashboarding class for intra-document linking. Intra-document linking was introduced in 4.2 SP6. So for example, if I, instead of going back and forth between the two tabs down at the bottom, to be more like a dashboard, you'd probably have that up at the top. And so here's an intra-document link on this second tab that goes back to the first tab. So you can see on the second tab, I just click on it and it brings me back to the first time instead of having to link down on the bottom. So it's more dashboardy like that. And how I would do that is I just bring in a cell and I click on it and I go to linking, still under report elements and under document linking, which could be, and this is under the HTML mode. If you're in the Java mode, you're not going to see this, but almost everybody's on HTML mode now, given that Java's an issue. So we have add document link, which people are used to going from document to document. And that's the default, is going document to document. But now there's the intra-document linking, which allows you to go from tab to tab, which is, again, more dashboard-like. So we can set the report name. I can add a tooltip. So I can just throw in a tooltip there and I can say, okay. And now I've got this intra-document link set here. But here's the problem. Here's the rub, so to speak. If I go to click on that, it doesn't do anything. It needs something in the front to actually click on. I actually have to have something in the text. So if I say back, for instance, and I type that in, now I have something to click on. So I can click on back and it will go over to the other tab. So that's the idea. But of course, what if we want an image? Well, our image scenario, right, on the cell was in the background. So that's where we get the rub. That's where you get the sort of like, what if I want to click on an image when it comes to linking? So what we can do instead of doing an image, so what, normally, like if I did an image, I would do image here, I would choose arrow or whatever, and I upload it, and oops, I want to actually set that to stretch so that it'll fit to my area. Now, if I don't, maybe I want it to click on this, but see, the problem is, again, that is in the background. So that's not doing me any good. So I need to have something in the foreground for it to click on. Okay, so instead of an arrow in the background,
hey, Amy,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Really quick question. Someone wants to know
Sure.
which version you're using.
I am on, that's a SP7, I think. Yeah, 7 patch 1.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just grabbed a VM so to use. So this is SP7 patch 1. Anything greater than SP6 was important to me, obviously, for the intra-document. 6 added so much, so it was anything greater than 6, you're good on the functionality. Okay, so I've got the arrow going backward to back, but I don't have anything in the foreground. So instead of doing that arrow in the background, I'm just going to remove that for now so it's not in the way. So I go back to no pattern. Instead of doing that, one of the options is to do a Unicode character. So by default, you're going to have Unicode access here. So I could do something like ampersand number and 8962, which happens to be a house sort of or home page type of concept. Of course, at this point, it's just text. So I have to go into format cell, tell it to read as HTML as opposed to hyperlink. And now it's a little house kind of thing. If I set it to set my background as no color, of course, it's that blue on blue, so we wouldn't want that. So another option, of course, is to set your hyperlinking color. So if I look at appearance on the report tab, so just that's under format report, I can set these to a white hyperlink for both visited and unvisited. In case you're not familiar with that. So now I have white to click on my blue background. I probably want this a little bit bigger. So I, set the font cell, because it is a basically font text kind of thing at this point. I might set it a little bit bigger. I might get rid of some margins. So if I go into the format cell on the alignment, I have, some margins by default. So I might get a little bit of room there, but, pretty much that's, I could set it to centered and stuff like that. So anyway,
Amy,
now I have, yes.
Another quick question. Where can we find the image files such as the arrow?
Oh, online. Google arrow and find an image. Now, that's an easy thing to say, but I think I might have drawn that in Paint, something simple. But I'm going to get to some better images in just a minute with my next topic. So hold that thought. This house image, thank you for the segue, because one of the things you'll notice that even though this works, because it is in the front, it's a text, and I click on it, it'll get me back. That's all good. But this house image is really boring. It's just a kind of, upward arrow almost, not even a house. It's actually meant to be a Unicode house. If you look it up online, you'll see Unicode house on Google, and you'll get this this number, this 8692 option. But let's talk about some better images than that as far as text to image to make it in the foreground. One of the things you can do is add fonts, and Windows has by default a Seago font, a few of them actually that you can add in. The way that those fonts, so you've got your fonts here under formatting, you've got your default fonts, but you could also add in some fonts. So you can add in Wingdings, which is kind of an older one that adds some images, but this Seago one, and there's 4 or 5 versions of the Seago one. I just brought in the symbol one. And I'll show you that in a second. But the Seago one actually has a ton of symbols that you can use. So you've got a lot more options than just this boring house one. So for example, for an arrow, so let me show you what that Seago, for example. If I, just look at the symbol references, there's just a ton of them. So if I want it to be an arrow back, then what I would use instead would be this. So I can copy that, just to make it easy, copy paste. Okay, and then of course at this point it's HTML, but it's Arial font. So the other step that I have to do is actually tell it to use my Seago, and now I have that image. I'm using that image instead, and it's still since it's text in front, I can use it. But the Seago has tons of options, and they're much more, rich in they look more modern. The Wingdings is not so modern, and there aren't as many. And the way that fonts are added is you kind of have to work with your admin. So you'd add them into your font alias. You'd create a font alias XML, and they get added into the location in, where your business objects is, into the Windows 64. A good example of, just for your notes, this is where PowerPoint comes in, is we always throw these things into PowerPoint, but I'll just bring in the URL. So if you're in support on SAP and you go to this knowledge base article, it'll show you how to add in fonts. And basically into that font alias, you would, for the administrators out there, you would add in whatever you want. And since it's already installed in Windows, you don't have to do some of the first parts. So some of the first part is, you have to actually, if it's an unusual font, then you have to actually let Windows know about it. And then if you're, otherwise, then you can just add it into the font alias into these Windows folders.
Amy,
yes.
Right now we just see your desktop. I'm not sure if you were showing a website. Just want to double check with you.
I thought that you would see that with me. Yes, I am showing a website.
Okay.
Just a second. I've shown a couple. That's too bad. Hold on a second.
Sorry,
No, that's good. I thought I was showing my desktop.
I wasn't
my
sure
whole
if you were
desktop.
getting to it or if it was already up. So I wanted to make sure you knew.
No, usually it would show my whole desktop as opposed to just, oh, it's because it's, yeah, I hate that. When I'm on a VM, it's separate. I don't think I'm going to be able to. Let me see if I can. Just won't take but a second. I forgot about that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is show this one. I forgot about that. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so can you see now the SEGO examples?
Yeah, we see it now.
Okay, so this is the SEGO code. So see, you can see you got so many images. It's a crazy amount of images that you have available to you, and all you have to add in is, once you've added the font to your Webi ability, then you have that you have to have the admin do that. Then you have this ability to just like put these in and send them to HTML and send them to SEGO font, and you can, and it's basically an icon that's clickable. So that's the SEGO. Then let me also show, I should have done this, sorry about that, on this page. And let me just put it in here. I think I have to log in and everything. But this is, if you can see that, that's the knowledge base article that tells you how to, 1907396, that tells you how to add fonts to 4.2 or 4.0 and above. So give that to your administrator, say, please add the SEGO font, and then you'll have them available. So, I mean, tons of images available that you can use as icons for various things. Once you have that, beyond just using it for that purpose, you could make them, I mean, beyond just a intra-document link, if you think about it with this, and I'm going to change this background back to white or transparent, it's fine. Beyond just doing that, I could bring in, like in this example, I have brought in a spreadsheet that has my symbol with the given product group I have. And so now I can bring in my, I'm going to change this order, my symbol, and I can use that instead of, to link on. So I can set that to HTML and SEGO font. And now I can use that as an icon that is, I can do element linking and so forth. And, if I take away this header and shorten this up, it takes a lot less space. So the whole idea of icons being that you're taking up less space and you're giving, the information is so much easier for people to consume when it's in images and they get used to an image meaning something. So if you can set that up for them, you can do that kind of thing even for element linking. So that's the idea of using SEGO. Is there any questions about that piece? Good. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any questions.
Awesome. Okay, so the next thing I want to show is the idea of images. Continuing on with our idea, our concept of images is image overlay. So if I go into here, I have, for example, a chart, and I might want it to look more like a thermometer, basically, in front of that. So if I bring in a cell in front of it, report elements, cell, and I bring in my image. So under format cell in the background, I bring in an image from file. And I happen to have a thermometer that I've made transparent in the right areas. I am going to show you how to do that. And I can upload that. And again, I'm going to make it stretch so I can make it to fit the cell the way I want it to. And then I can, since I set it up second, I can drag that on top of this, and I can fit it to be exactly how I want it to look, etc., so that it's all set. And of course, right now you're not seeing the red in the background because this cell has still has a white color because that's what it is by default. So if I go in ahead and I set it to transparent, now I have that sort of image look and it will fill up with that chart in the background, which is kind of cool. And, of course, you'd be able to, get rid of this line and, I don't know, set it up to look exactly the way you want it to. The issue, though, of course, is that, I've got this 2010, down here and I want that to be on top, but I want the chart to be in the background. So it's an interesting scenario of, how do I want to display it when I have two different objects? So this is kind of a workaround to make, this is a way that you can do overlays with a transparent image. But I do want to point out that Need for Viz, which we partner with, actually has, and I'm going to bring that one in before I forget, actually has a really good single component option for that. So in their gauges category. So in their gauges category, they have a pictorial stack. So you see, this is a single component concept, and you can have tooltips that hover over it, and it would, instead of having one image on top of the stack chart, you have this sort of tooltip functionality. Everything's built into one component. So instead of two components, an image and a chart, you have the single component, which of course is much slicker and better. And you can get rid of lines and make things kind of work with the method that I'm showing you, but with the Need for Viz component, it's all built in. So that's pretty cool. It makes more sense in terms of, the way you want to work with an image in your functionality. So you can bring in whatever image you want. In this case, it's an image of, a person, but it could be with a transparent middle part, but it's part of the component. So, go back to this. So how I told you that I was going to show you how to do this. I of course was going to show you in my actual thing. I can show my components with them.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
Do you still have the article number from the SAP site up by chance? I didn't catch it, and I wanted to throw it in the chat for everybody.
Oh yeah. Yes, 1907396.
1907396.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to send that out now.
So what I'm having trouble getting to is showing me my component, my share, not share. Dang it. Because this isn't going to, well, let's see if we can do it. So an easy way, I mean, of course, any of your, images you could do through various different. So if you're not familiar with doing this in your particular, Photoshop or whatever, you can do this in Pixlr. It's an online one. That's one that I use a lot because a lot of times I'll be on site, not anymore, but a lot of times I'll be on site with somebody and on their computer and not have my stuff with me or, my apps loaded. So this is an online one. So I could create a little, transparency image easily that way. So I bring my image in, you add in a background. So you add in an empty background. So you can see this is this layer here. Then you take the wand, and this is pretty much what most photo editors will do to make this, make a piece transparent, but you wand out the part that you want to be transparent, whatever it is. You might hold the control key down and select all this black part. I've already done it on this one, you can tell. But then you just delete. So you delete the part that is the color that you want, and it will show the layer that's the empty layer in the background, and that's how you make it transparent. So then once you're done, you do file save, and you save it as a PNG. It has to be PNG to pick up that transparency, and download it, and you've got it ready to go. So that's the idea, a quick and easy of how you can make something transparent. All of that is easily Googleable, if you're not familiar with it. So, okay. So yeah, so I've got 4 more minutes. A couple of the other things I wanted to point out is conditional formatting on charts. So here we have an example of a conditional format on a chart where we've actually set it up as data series. I'm going to try to throw in data series stuff. So individual series have been set up. And then each of those series you can set as a color. So the way you set those individual series as a color is you right click, you do format data series, and you've got this little area of setting up a specific color, and you can click on each one to be whatever color you want. So you can set individual colors on a chart rather than using a color palette, which gives you a little bit more control on color. But you'll notice that you don't have a lot of you have show data labels, but you don't have like the number format of the data labels here. So there's a little piece to know in the background when it comes to formatting data series, and that is that if you format it ahead of time and then turn it off, so like if we turned on the number type data label to show a certain way, and then we to show with a $sign, and then we turn that data label off, then when we come in here for the individual series, we can say, okay, go ahead and show that data series, and it will show up with a $sign. So there's definitely things missing on this screen, but it's not actually missing in total. That's one thing to note about data series, is that you are actually getting the full functionality of the data series that you would get through format. Let's go to global data values. So when you do data values here you've got a lot more functionality, and that would basically carry through when you get to the individual series. You just turn it off on the display. So that's one thing to note. But the way we do conditional formatting on charts, and we do this in our Webi class, is we would just do the individual series, create them as different series. The bummer part about that, I think, is that you actually can see the spacing. You can work with spacing a little bit, but it always kind of shows up, even with making things go away when empty. So that's one thing to note about data series. Another interesting thing to note about data series that's helpful, or that we do in our class, since I've got 1 more minute left, is we do input controls here on this. If you look at this chart, and we've got we go to quarterly, monthly, so we're basically showing the different things. But down in the metric, we've got revenue, number of orders, number of products, and total discount. Well, obviously, revenue and total discount are going to be ones that are dollars, and these are going to be not dollars. So we would want that formatting to show through. So if you set them up as 2 different data series, then they'll show. You can actually format them separately, and it'll show whenever we click on revenue versus total discount. We would get the $sign, and when we click on either of these, we would get, however we formatted that series. So that's something to keep in mind as far as how data series can work with input controls. Again, all of this is in our Webi dashboarding class. We cover quite a bit in that, and we get kind of into, directly into a lot of the formatting options within Webi for dashboarding.